Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of the latest episode of Supernatural Atomic Monsters. And this episode was both good and bad. One storyline where they were doing the Monster of the Week kind of hunt was good. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed seeing the interactions with Sam and Dean and what was going on in that storyline. If it was just that for the whole episode, I'd say it would be a very good throwback to usually what Supernatural's about. But we also get this B storyline of Chuck and God thrown in here, and its execution just kind of throws everything kind of off. Why you can pretty much say this is both a good and bad episode because of how it kind of drives up. Pretty much the perfect state of what has been going on with Supernatural for seasons now. Microcosmed into just one episode. So let's start off with how the episode began, because that's also its own kind of separate thing that's like, alright, we'll have to see how that works out. Get through the Monster of the Week kind of story and what kind of issues have popped up with Chuck's whole thing. So the episode opens and we see this strange kind of action sequence going on. And it kind of works because I saw that Jensen Ackles directed this one, and of course we get a Dean action thing in the beginning. Now, normally, I'd be like, oh yeah, cool, I'm all up for that. But the way this is executed, it just felt like, oh, okay, I saw John Wick, I like John Wick, let's kind of do this like John Wick without really getting everything lined up to work out perfectly. Because it just starts going really kind of weird in what's happening here. So we see Dean going through the bunker hallways taking out demons. And he's got a gun that's not the Colt that's using demon killing bullets. So it's like, okay, that's kind of strange. And then also, we've got demons going after people when they can, like, use their powers to, like, force kill someone from across the room. Granted, that in and of itself is not a problem. The lack of explanation and the like lore behind it, like, okay, maybe there is a dampening effect or something going on. Maybe there's something in the bunker that's allowing this to occur, that the demons don't have full access to their abilities. There can be explanations as to why you would have demons going around with a gun. We don't really have that here. But as we go through this strange sequence where the action's okay. Mainly because they are in tight quarters, so they kind of have to do things kind of as limited as possible because they don't have really that much space to do the action sequence. And it's not horrendous, but it's definitely not like showcasing Dean's best techniques, usually in like hand-to-hand combat that we've seen. So he's able to get to a room, and we find that Benny's there, and he's human, and he's dying. They have their kind of moment, and then Benny dies, and then he's trying to get information out of a demon that's pretty much dying, and he kills him, and goes into the main kind of area of the bunker, and we see that it is Sam leading this charge against the hunters and against Dean. And evidently he did something to Bobby and Jody, and that he is on the demon's blood again. And I'm like, what in the actual fuck? I'm like, that's pulling from like so far back into season like 4 and 5 and everything. I'm like, okay, that is really strange for that to pop up and be an issue like now. And evidently this is like evil Sam. And well, which, by the way, does have a kind of different vibe than like Soulless Sam and Lucifer Sam. But we don't really get any explanation for what's going on. Dean's kind of pretty much running interference as the hunter's pretty much coming up behind him. And Sam is able to do his force power, so that kind of even throws away the explanation of why the demons would be using guns. And then he kills Dean, and Sam wakes up from his nightmares like, what the fuck? So we've gotten a little bit more information on that front because we had seen Sam previously having stuff with what was going on with this vision, but we don't have any more information on how this is supposed to connect to the narrative. Are these visions from God? Is this one of God's potential endings that he's attempting to think of? We don't know, but hopefully we'll get some more information. It just needs to connect better in what's going on. I understand that this is the first time we've seen this, and that this is the first time we're getting this information. We'll be getting more, of course, shortly. But it just seems really strange, and you've got to really kind of build up to what's going on there, since it seems like another kind of world. Who knows? Maybe the whole multiverse concept gets even thrown, smashed up more together in what's going on. So, of course, Dean pretty much waking him up, and they go to kind of like talk things about what's going on. Sam's like, I'm just having nightmares and stuff like that. He's like, yeah, it comes with the job. I know you're beat up about Rowena and everything. Tries to give him veggie bacon and get him on a hunt to kind of get him out of his headspace. Dean, of course, goes off, and Sam tries the bacon, and he's like, this is actual bacon. He's like, yeah, I don't buy that hippie crap, because Sam brought that up. He's like, you call yourself the meat man, which doesn't mean what you think it means. He's like, yeah, I'm the meat man. Goes off. That was a good moment. I'm like, okay, that's kind of more in line with kind of the Dean that has usually been in the past. I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. So they go off to investigate what's going on with this town. There's like a lot of cattle mutilations, and then evidently a cheerleader got killed. Granted, for the sake of pretty much brevity, there are names for these cheerleaders, but I'm mainly just sticking to like the main character for it, because they're essentially interchangeable, except for the one that got kidnapped. So they go out, and they're going to investigate what's going on. Sam's pretty much talking with the vice principal, and pretty much getting the inner dynamics of what was going on with the friends. One of them's really torn up about what's going on, and they're of course going to have a kind of prayer thing going on for the deceased cheerleader. She was evidently friends with everybody, and of course this group of parents come up acting like Dillholt, being like, it's like the end of the world, we got a scouter for our son Billy here. And of course Sam's like, you fucking entitled little bastards, end of the world. I swear to God, it was really great to at least see Sam throughout this episode. There were interesting little tidbits into watching his kind of mental state, because he looked like he was about to fucking blow a goddamn gasket, being like, end of the world? You know how many fucking end of the worlds I've actually had to fucking deal with, and your kid having to fucking wait for a scout? Now, granted, he didn't completely hulk out, but seeing that kind of simmering, I was like, okay. And just how snarky he kind of got a little bit, was like, yeah. And even the vice principal was like, you fucking dillholes. But they're pretty much trying to figure out what's going on. We see that Dean is, of course, like, hey, there's a dude dressed up as a beaver, kind of like going around on a scooter. Okay, that's kind of interesting. And they kind of get some more info about what's going on. Dean, of course, grilling said beaver dude. He's like, hey, yeah, that dude's pretty cool. It was interesting, because Dean finding, like, enjoyment in kind of weird little things, it was well done at least. It kind of brought a little bit of brevity, because sometimes you just go a little bit too long with a lot of the heavy stuff, and it's not like completely turning him into a Marvel character, just quipping out of everywhere. You still see him being serious and on task, trying to figure out what's going on. Of course, they figure out more of the dynamics. One of their friends is more broken up about the cheerleader girl being killed than the others, and they're trying to figure out kind of what's going on. They do go out to kind of find what happened to the body, and they're like, there's not a lot of blood here, so they're pretty much trying to put it together that it's a vampire. And we see that one of the other cheerleader girls pretty much gets abducted, and they're trying to figure out what's going on there. When they're trying to figure out who the vampire is, they first think that it is one of the other friends, pretty much trying pecking order. They try and go after her, and they're pretty much ready to like inject her with the blood to kind of incapacitate her, but we see that she's got braces and everything. Sam catches that, and then like, can't be her. That of course lines up to when the girl is then taken. They go to the vice principal's office and see that it is one of the cars that belonged to the Billy parents person, and they're like, okay, we got to figure out what's going on here. As you can see, it's kind of going at a nice clip, and you're thinking, okay, Since the parents are being dill holes, you're kind of thinking, all right, they're the ones that are doing this, and they're going to be the vampires. And we even see that they have the girl in the house with the blood. It's like, all right, what's going on here? So Sam and Dean pretty much get in there, and Dean's pretty much getting ready to chop the father's head off. But of course, the mother comes in with a gun, and be like, got you. Sam, of course, does have the girl at this point because the mother found him in their kind of little space, and they had sent Billy kind of upstairs for a little bit, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. Dean, of course, is pretty much calling that the father is the vampire. He'd like gotten in contact with the vampire, got turned, was trying to keep it under control, and killed somebody. But of course, Billy comes down and is telling him to chill out, and then he explains the situation, and it is actually Billy, and that he was making out with his girlfriend, and he lost control and he killed her, and he's been torn up about it ever since. And they're, of course, trying to keep their world intact, but Billy, of course, knows that that's not the case, and it's been eating him up. And he's like, all right, what's going to happen is you're going to call, and I'm going to get, of course, this other girl medical attention. I'm going to go with them. They're going to do their thing. And we, of course, get them talking about, like, if you have kids, you do anything to protect them as well. And Dean's like, kind of not flabbergasted, but like a little bit like, wow, you're gonna let me chop your head off. It's like, I'd do anything to protect my kid. It's like, wow, okay. And then we kind of see him going through the end as the parents go through the whole thing. We see the girl taken off to the hospital, and we see them take the kid out, and Dean chops his head off. It's like, okay. I like the misdirections and how it was kind of structured, because you're thinking, okay, how is this going to work out? And the journey to get to that kind of end was enjoyable. It was pretty much your nice, typical kind of supernatural episode. So, there, of course, towards the end, this, of course, comes up more towards the end of the episode, where Sam and Dean have, of course, their heart-to-heart philosophical discussion in the car. That pretty much is the same kind of thing that we've had before, but this time Sam is getting more and more fed up with what's going on and how he doesn't really think he can keep carrying this weight. We've seen as this episode has progressed, even when they went out to examine the area that the body was found for the cheerleader, that he brings up that these people don't understand what's out there. And it goes to that, like, ignorance versus knowledge. What goes on with the world? Who should act on these things and do this job to protect people, and should people know about that? How would that change their lives, affect their decisions and everything? Interesting kind of stuff that we keep like coming back to, but we don't get complete kind of movement on. As we see Dean's like, yeah, this is the job, this is what we got to do, and we just got to keep motoring through it. Usual kind of Dean kind of fare there. But we see that Sam is starting to kind of crack with this. This kind of lines up with what we are seeing with the whole God portion. And this, oh boy. So we check back in with Becky, the uber super fan of Chuck and like the whole supernatural thing, the one that did the whole love potion on Sam and all that. Well, evidently she's got a family, and the husband and the kids go off, and I don't remember exactly when she did the whole Sam love potion thing, but they smartly kind of keep the kids to a minimum, because you're like trying to figure out timeline wise if she'd have been able to be married long enough and have these kids fast enough for this to occur. But it's like, whatever, we're already fast and loose with the Lord as is. It's just one more plot to the holes that we have. So we see that Chuck, of course, comes up to her and says that he needs help, and we find out what she's been doing, and she's just been going on a like fanfic kind of craze, and is just doing stuff with like supernatural stuff on Etsy and like selling that stuff, and that this is one of her days to kind of do that. And I'm like, okay. And it's really kind of weird, because I'm seeing this stuff and I'm getting kind of vibes of God from the show Preacher. Now in that, when God is kind of a little bit more active in the final seasons, you see him with kind of things of little representations of the other characters in the world, and I'm thinking, okay, kind of going that route. And then also seeing the Pop Funkos, it's like, okay, here we go. But Of course, he kind of lays down what's going on, that he really hasn't been writing. He wants to write and create, but he just doesn't feel himself. And she kind of lays into him and all that, and says that like a writer just needs to write and get through. And he's like, "Yep, you're right." And pretty much takes over a computer, writes it, and of course this is interspersed without the episode. We get back to it, and she of course reads it, and she's like, "Yeah, it's pretty good." And he's like, "Got any note?" And then at least one note, and she just goes and pretty much rips it. God's like, "Fine, move." And then he goes and essentially does all the kind of crap. Also, a part that we've gotten into this point is that he brings up the whole Leviathans and everything, and how we see the different kind of dualities of the writing processes of what's going on with the show. Her talking about how she does stuff with like Sam and Dean doing laundry and all that, whereas Chuck is going, "Hey, that's the monsters are the greatest," bringing up the Leviathans, and I'm like, yeah, the Leviathans sound great on paper. The execution was the thing that started going completely and utterly balls bustingly crazy. And it's really kind of weird seeing this, because it's a weird kind of meta commentary on the writers trying to write for this show. And it's really just kind of strange, because they're like, yeah, especially when you are putting that the writers are essentially Chuck God, it gets really kind of uncomfortable when they're like, "Oh, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this no matter what." It's like, yeah, you're going to feel something for this. I'm like, okay. Don't treat the audience as an antagonist. We've seen that a lot over a lot of different kind of shows lately, and it's just like, no. Nobody wants to be against something. It's like, okay, now granted, you don't have to agree with every decision, but it's like, okay, the Leviathans, they sounded good on paper, they just needed to be done a little bit better. So then God goes completely, and I'm like, woo, and Becky then reads it and says that it's horrible, it's way too dark, it's hopeless, and what he does to Sam and Dean, he's like, yeah, but you feel something for it. It's like, you have to have that temperance to understand what the dark, how dark to go and how light to go. That balance kind of effect. Because he even brought up, I got it now, final season, the end, and like a tombstone with Winchester on it. And I'm like, yeah, wasn't that what you were doing at the end of the previous season? I'm like, okay, so what did the fucking end mean then? What did we start this season with? A fart? Like, that's what it almost feels like. Like, here is the end. Ah, crap. We're 4 episodes in. We gotta change this up. Not that we've had much to kind of deal with, but now that we've understand that God's now got a new plan for the end, it's just kind of strange to feel like, okay, we're 4 episodes in. You would usually kind of want a better kind of outline for the overall arc and plot points, so that way you can have your plot specific episodes and your Monster of the Week specific episodes. Because if you're gonna end Supernatural, you definitely need Monster of the Week episodes. You can interweave them. It's just like, So of course Becky's freaking out. Her family's pretty much coming in. Thanos snaps away the family, and then he's like, yeah, I like it here, and think I'm going to stay a while. And then pretty much poofs Becky away and just takes over her house. And I'm just like, This episode was a mess. I'm like, jeez. Now, granted, my complete issue with what's going on with God isn't that we're getting plot movement forward or it's going in a direction that I don't like. I would like to have a clearer direction of what's going on and not be like, hey, that problem that we fixed at the beginning was just essentially just that, a thing. Even though you would think that ripping open a hole into hell and letting everybody out would have been the first salvo in some giant grand plan. But we're kind of going to have to see. So that was just like, what? Coupled with the fact of what we got with the visions in the beginning, it's just like, this weights it more towards, okay, typical kind of supernatural writing, but at least you kind of got the glimmer of, okay, here's the kind of normal kind of supernatural stuff with the Monster of the Week episodes kind of thing with the whole vampire situation. I really like that, and I'm just like, couldn't it have just been all that? So we'll just kind of have to see how this goes, how the whole kind of Chuck situation goes, what's going on with Cass. We'll see. Now, granted, that hasn't been as long as us checking in on actually Billy, the entity from the empty, and Jack, well, and Lucifer, since Lucifer's in there too, and hopefully we get to check in on them because that's another plot thread, and hopefully we get to check in on Adam or whatnot, because he's been in hell, they open the cage, and he's just sitting in there. And it'd be a real furry bitch if we go through this whole season and they do nothing with Adam. Hey, we'll see. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.